Hello, welcome once again to my kitchen here at Trails Inn 62. Today I'm going to be doing mac and cheese. I know it's another one of those rebel canning things. It's generally not approved by any of your government agencies, educational institutions, or anything like that. So, understand I'm doing this specifically and primarily for educational, informational. This is what I do, my kitchen, my rules. This is not a recommendation to do this. This is just for your information and education. This is how I'm doing it in my kitchen, and I have no problem with it. And there have been many others who have done this with no problem. So just want to let you know right off, that's the way it rolls. All right. Now, so we're going to be doing mac and cheese in pint jars. And we're going to start off with a cheese sauce. And I happen to be using a nacho cheese sauce. You can use cheddar cheese, that's fine. I'm using this because I happen to have it on hand. Now, you have to mix this with water, and you mix it with water because the macaroni has to absorb the water. It makes it flow a little better, makes it easier to mix up and everything. Most recipes that I've seen, not most, a lot of the recipes that I've seen call for 1-to-1 ratio of water to cheese mix. In other words, I'm going to put 1 can of cheese mix in, I'm going to put 1 can of water, or what most people use then is chicken broth. So I'm going to use chicken broth instead of just plain water. You can use just plain water, but I'm going to use chicken broth. So this will probably make about 15 pints, but just a word of caution when you mix this up, only mix up what you're going to be canning. Don't mix your jars up and let them set while you're canning. Like I have 2 Nesco pressure canners, electric canners, and I'm going to be doing 10 pints at a time because that's all I can fit in there. I could probably do my big stovetop canner, and you can double stack it in there, and I could do all 15 of them at once. But I don't want to mess with it on the stove, so I use my electric canners. But only mix up, and you mix it in the jars as you go, only mix up what you're going to use, what you're going to can. You don't want it sitting there because the macaroni will absorb the liquid, and a lot of times it'll start sticking and get hard and like concrete kind of stuff. So you don't want to do that. I'm not speaking from experience. I'm just looking at what I've been told. So mix up only what you're going to process at a time. I'm not going to use a full can of water. There's a lot of different thoughts on this, on what people put in there, how much water they put in there, and it varies depending on how much water, it varies depending on how much macaroni you put in there, and there's a lot of variables involved in here. So this is the way I'm doing it, so you understand. There are other recipes that have other things. Some use a full can of water, some use half a can, you know, different variations of that. I'm going to use about 3/4 of a can of chicken broth. I keep saying water, but mainly people use chicken broth. You can add water. Alright, and then again, the amount of macaroni that you put in the pint, there's a lot of different variables with that. You know, some say 2/3 cup, some say half a cup, some say 3/4 cup. You know, it varies, and a lot of that depends on how you're going to do it, how you process it and everything, how much water you have in it. So you have to take all that into consideration. For my recipe, I'm doing it this way. So if there are other recipes you've heard of, you've seen other people do this, they have other recipes, that's fine. There are different variables, but it's all based upon how much macaroni, how much water, or chicken broth you have in your cheese sauce, and all those different variables. It's the same way with headspace. There's one place I saw said to leave, you know, full 2 inch of headspace, 1.5 to 2 inches. A lot of them just say 1 inch of headspace, and I've seen some where 1 inch headspace wasn't quite enough. So I'm probably going to leave about 1.5 inches of headspace, thereabouts. Leave plenty of headspace, but not too much. But I've seen it where it's up to 2 inches. So a lot of variables. So here's what I went with. Okay, I'm going to use the number 10 can of cheese sauce. And again, nacho cheese because, well, it gives it a little more flavor, but also it's what I had on hand. So that's what I'm going to use. And so, again, it should do about 15 pints. And I'm only going to do 10 of them at a time. because I don't want it sitting around. So the first thing you do is you put your cheese sauce into a large bowl, stock pot. I'm going to be using a stock pot. Put my cheese sauce in there. Now, one thing, you don't heat this up. You don't want to heat it up, because when you heat it up, then things start happening to the macaroni and everything when it's heated. So you don't want to heat it up. In my canners, I have room temperature water, not cold water, room temperature, slightly warm, but not hot or not real warm, just room temperature. Okay, it'll take a little longer for them to heat up, but I don't want my macaroni to start cooking prematurely. So that's why I'm not heating this up. You don't want your sauce hot, so I'm gonna mix the chicken broth and the cheese sauce cold, and I'll mix it all together. Let's start out mixing our cheese sauce and our chicken broth. So I'm going to add chicken broth to my cheese sauce, about 3/4 of a can, and that came out to be about 10 cups. And then we'll stir this up real good and get it all mixed together. Again, no heating, so this may take a little while to get this all stirred up, get it all incorporated in. But we'll stir it, and I'll stir it till it gets all mixed up into one fluid. And it'll give it a little bit of fluidity, if you will, for when I put it in the jars. Alright, I'm going to stir this till it gets done. Get my jars set out here and get everything ready to go. Now I put a 1/2 cup of noodles in each pint. Now I'm using the small noodles. You can use the big noodles. The amount doesn't change. A 1/2 cup is 1/2 cup, whether they're big noodles or small noodles. You just have less noodles. So I use the small ones, the small macaroni, and I put 1/2 cup per pint. And then I'm going to put my sauce in. And I'm going to leave 1.5 inches headspace. My funnel comes down to 1 inch, and the inch is going to be right here, so 1.5 inches will be just a little bit more there. About right there. Leave 1.5 inches headspace, and then I'm going to immediately stir this. Debubble it and stir it, because you don't want your noodles to be clogging up in there in clumps. So stir it real good so your noodles get all mixed around in there. We don't want any of them clumping up. And then it's ready to go in the canner. So I'm going to do each one of these, and each one of them, don't just add your cheese sauce and then go back and start debubbling. You want to debubble each jar as you do it so it doesn't clump up in there. Okay? Now once you've got them all filled up, stirred good, debubbled, the main thing is to stir them really good so that you get some of that sauce around all the noodles and they're not clumped up, sticking together. Break them loose, stir them up real good. That's important. Alright, I've got my tin done. Now the next step, of course, you have to wipe your rims. Always wipe your rims. I use vinegar. You can use water on these, I guess, but mostly I just use vinegar always to wipe my rims, and that's because I have hard water. I'm going to put the vinegar in my canners to keep the hard water deposits off my jar. So I'm going to wipe these rims with a little vinegar, and you know, this can get kind of messy, so you want to make sure you get the rim wiped good. spilled some at on the sides of it. Wouldn't hurt to wipe off those too. But make sure there's nothing on the top, because when you put your lids on, you don't want anything there. Alright, I'm going to wipe the rest of these rims, and then we're going to go for the lids. Okay, I've got all my lids on. Now I put my rings on. Remember, finger tight is always the rule. Just finger tight. And I'll set them in my canner. I have my water in my canner. Normally I would put hot water in the canner, but this is not hot water. This is room temperature water because the jars are not hot. The contents is not hot. So the water in the canner is not hot. Okay, going to pressure can these for 25 minutes on standard pressure canning, and 25 minutes. And go. Now again, I use 15 pounds pressure weight on mine because I'm above 1,000 feet. If you're below 1,000 feet or below, you only use 10 pounds. Time is still the same when you're pressure canning. So 25 minutes, and my canner will go. I finished up my mac and cheese. There we go. I did have two that didn't seal. I don't know why it leaked out a little bit in there, so maybe I didn't quite give enough headspace, but that happens when you're canning. You get some leakage, sometimes they don't seal. So I had 15 pints. So I did 3 of my Nesco canners, 5 pints in each canner. Had 15 pints. I had enough sauce left over that I could have done 16 pints. The recipe would have made 16 pints. Had I thought about this before and realized it might actually do that, because recipes don't always do what they're supposed to, I would have done a little different. What I have discovered about my Nesco canner, electric canner, is while it will only fit 5 pints in the canner, it will actually fit 5.5 pints. Pint-sized jars this size will fit right down in the middle of your 5 pints, and so you can actually do 5.5 pints on this type of jar. Some half-pint jars are a little shorter and squattier. Those won't work. This one will fit right down in there nicely. This is the tall, slim half-pint jars, and it worked great. Had I realized that before, that I was going to have enough juice to do 16 pints, I would have done another one of these. As it was, I only got one done because I did that in my last batch of 5. So 15 pints, 2 of them didn't seal, but we did eat them. They were good, and we really liked them. They were really good. Great. I heated them up a little bit in the microwave on, well, I put them into a bowl, and I heated them up on a casserole setting, which microwaves and then backs off, and then so it didn't cook them any more than they needed to be. Heated them up. They were real good. They were creamy. The noodles weren't too soft. They were really nice, good flavor, good taste. I like the nacho in them because that gives a little punch, and so I think I'm going to keep doing it with the nacho cheese without the regular cheese, but I may do some with the regular cheese. But I've got 15.5 pints. Okay, I only have 13.5 pints now because I did eat those 2. Like I said, they were good. Of macaroni and cheese. There you have it. Macaroni and cheese. Going to be a good meal. Well, that's it. From my house to your house. From my kitchen to your kitchen. God bless.